Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, today we have a bit of a challenge for you, and maybe for us too. We're taking two concepts that, frankly, you'd think should never be in the same sentence. We're talking about the complex, often misunderstood philosophy of Tupac Shakur's thug life, and get this, the organizational behavior of an ant colony. And we're going to use them to talk about, well, building successful civilizations.
Yeah, it sounds it sounds completely ridiculous on the surface, which honestly is probably why it's so interesting. The sources we were given and the title is fantastic. Thug Life, the six-legged edition. They argue something pretty profound. They say if you strip away the specifics, the culture, the species, you're left with these four fundamental shared principles of survival.
Okay, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the basic idea here. Comparing a code that came out of systemic oppression, cultural struggle, to the, I guess, primal chemical drive that runs an insect colony. I mean, where does the source material even find enough common ground, philosophically?
Well, the common ground is necessity. That's the key. Both systems, both structures, they're built out of sheer urgency. So our mission really is to unpack that for you, to show how both the human struggle Tupac talked about and the biological struggle of the ant, how they both rely on collective survival, absolute loyalty, relentless resilience, and strategic dominance. How they use these to build and keep their empires going is really a look at organizational structure just optimized for survival under pressure.
Okay, all right. Let's dive into theme one then. Loyalty, the crew, and the perpetual hustle. So if you look at the thug life philosophy, it's often summed up in this idea of the grind.
Yeah.
For anyone maybe not familiar, this isn't just, working hard. It's that relentless, nonstop push for success when the normal ways, the formal paths, they're blocked or just not available to you. It's really an economic strategy born from obstacles.
And that definition, relentless, constant motion, driven by this basic need to survive and get ahead, that describes an ant colony perfectly. I mean, perfectly. If you want something that embodies the perpetual grind, look no further. They exist in what the source called perpetual collective motion, just tirelessly working together for a common goal. They are quite literally the crew.
Right, and the sources explicitly say the ants are on a 247 grind, with no days off when it comes to the Queen's demands. That's some serious dedication. But
There's a huge difference, isn't there? Like the human choice to be loyal to your crew, that's conscious. It's often risky.
Yeah.
The ant's loyalty, it's biological, right? Instinct.
That's the critical distinction, absolutely. We have to keep that in mind. But the functional result ends up looking remarkably similar. It results in absolute, unquestionable loyalty that puts the collective way above the self. So while Tupac was talking about loyalty within your chosen circle, your people, in the ant colony, that dedication is driven by, well, pheromones and chemistry. It has to be absolute. So in that way, the source's observation that in the ant colony, there are no individuals, only the crew, that really hits home. But maybe for reasons that are darker, less philosophical. I mean, there's just no room for self-interest when the biological programming says the colony's success is your only success.
Exactly. The individual identity is completely fused with the group's purpose. There's no separation. Their own survival depends entirely on the group holding together. The success of the Queen, defending the tunnels, all of it. And that intensity, that level of dependence, it creates an organizational structure that's incredibly focused and, frankly, terrifyingly efficient. That dependence, that's the essential link we're exploring.
Right, that intensity. It leads us right into theme two, doesn't it? Survival, resilience, and asserting dominance. Both concepts seem defined by this need to survive, even thrive, in hostile places. It's survival against the odds, but, taken to an extreme.
Oh, the resilience of ants is. It's genuinely remarkable. Think about it. They build and maintain these complex societies in, like cracks in the pavement, under scorching soil, along your sidewalk, places that are constantly being disrupted by massive threats, which is usually us. They manage to thrive where, honestly, lesser beings would just be wiped out.
Okay, and the sources link this resilience back to thug life, the idea of needing to assert yourself in a tough world. But I have to push back a little here. We're talking about dominance. That implies strategy, power projection. Are we really saying these tiny insects are engaging in, strategic land grabs with iron-fisted efficiency? Seems a bit much.
Well, we're attributing the functional outcome of dominance, maybe not conscious strategy in the human sense, but their survival absolutely depends on controlling resources, and that means outcompeting others. So they assert dominance by controlling territory, securing food, establishing control over their little patches of sidewalk or soil with what the course does call iron-fisted efficiency. They don't negotiate. They acquire resources through superior organization and, well, sheer numbers.
I suppose, yeah. If you're a rival beetle, or maybe a scavenging fly, that disciplined line of ants does represent a kind of established dominant force. A hostile power, even. They don't just wait for things to fall in their lap, they secure the means to exploit it.
Precisely. And to make that resilience really hit home, just think about the dangers they face daily.
Right.
Every single trip out for resources is like a near-death mission for them. The ant has to face down dangers that, for us, would be like a hurricane or an earthquake. A certain shadow from a boot, a single water droplet that's like a flash flood to them, a kid's finger, all that risk, just for a tiny crumb.
Wow. So they're essentially fighting this constant microscale war for their empire's future against forces that are completely unaware they even exist.
They're taking what they see as theirs, from an environment that constantly tries to starve them or crush them. The underlying principle the source points to is clear. They don't just get by, they thrive. And that capacity, that resilience and self-assertion against overwhelming odds, that's the surprising link.
Okay, let's talk about the structure that lets them do this. That brings us to theme 3. The unseen, or maybe underground, empire. This is where the parallel gets really fascinating for me. This idea of a powerful infrastructure that's just invisible to the mainstream. Thug life often spoke to an economy, a social structure, operating by its own rules, largely ignored or at least totally misunderstood by the dominant society.
And this is where the ant colony is just the ultimate example of that kind of structure. The vast, vast majority of ant activity, the really critical stuff, the organization, prepping defenses, logistics. And I tell you, it all happens completely beneath the surface in these super elaborate tunnel systems and chambers. What we see, those little scouting parties above ground, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
It's so true. We walk over these little cracks in the sidewalk every single day, and we're totally oblivious to this, like, hyper-organized metropolis buzzing just inches below our feet.
It's an absolute engineering marvel, really. And that hidden infrastructure, it supports everything you see above ground, the foraging, the defense, the whole crew structure. Yet the system itself, the engine room, is basically unknown to the casual observer.
Yeah, right.
And the sources give us that really striking comparison. They call ants the original underground architects of thug life.
Underground architects. Wow. That phrase really captures the scale, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We're talking about building a genuine metropolis, a huge, organized social network, right under our feet, with, as the source says, thousands of fellow soldiers. That complexity implies the real power is deliberately hidden, protected from the outside world's disruptions.
It's strategic invisibility, exactly. The ant empire keeps its means of production, its reproduction, all secured in this vast, protected network. It's designed to be self-sufficient and resist interference. It runs entirely on its own code, its own internal economy.
Okay, so the key to keeping this empire going, both literally underground and, philosophically unseen, it must be incredible ingenuity, which moves us nicely into theme 4, resourcefulness and adaptability. Or maybe what we could call the entrepreneurial spirit.
I like that. Entrepreneurial spirit. And that ingenuity, it comes directly from what you might call street intelligence, which is really a cornerstone of the thug life philosophy, right? That ability to survive, even prosper, using whatever means you have, turning a disadvantage into an opportunity. It's innovation purely driven by necessity.
And ants are just masters of this, absolute masters, the ultimate scavengers.
They really are. They are the original make a way out of no way crew, aren't they? They use every single available resource to push the colony's agenda forward. Their resourcefulness, their adaptability when facing huge logistical problems. It's extraordinary.
Can you give us a really concrete example of that? How does that street intelligence actually look in six-legged action?
Okay, think about a dropped crumb or like a tiny bit of food waste on the street. To us, it's just trash, refuse, nothing. But to the ant colony, that little piece of garbage is instantly transformed. It becomes, as the source puts it, a thug life jackpot for the entire crew. See, they don't have the luxury of like farming big fields. They have to exploit every tiny accidental offering the human world leaves behind.
Right, and it's not just finding the resources, is it? It's how they manage to move them. How does one tiny ant move something that's like 10 times its size?
Through communication strategy and just sheer numbers. Collective power. They leverage the group to overcome that massive size difference. But the ultimate example, the absolute peak of this collective ingenuity, the thing that perfectly sums up everything, loyalty, resilience, strategy, is what they do when they hit a gap they can't cross.
Ah, the famous ant bridge. Yeah, that image is just so powerful.
It really is. They will literally build a bridge out of their own bodies if necessary, just to get the crew across a physical obstacle. Imagine that level of loyalty, that strategic commitment. Individuals physically putting themselves in danger, becoming infrastructure, just for the crew's logistical goal.
Mhm.
It's the most literal embodiment of no individuals, only the crew you could possibly imagine.
Wow, that really suggests the empire's success isn't just more important than the individual soldier, but that the individual's entire existence is actually defined by the success of the mission.
Absolutely. The code, like we said, forged by necessity, demands total commitment. There's no other way.
So if we pull back and look at the big picture here, the main conclusion seems to be that both thug life as a concept and ant colony behavior, they're both governed by these codes forged by necessity. These aren't just abstract ideas. They're like operational manuals for how to survive when the outside world is hostile and resources are scarce.
Exactly. They both value loyalty above everything else. They prioritize resilience, and they both successfully built empires. One is cultural, social. The other is a literal physical metropolis right beneath our feet. The comparison, strange as it sounds, it really highlights some core truths about community, organization, survival. Doesn't matter if you have 2 legs or 6.
Yeah, it really forces you to ask, what actually makes a society resilient, successful? And the answer, at least according to these sources, seems to be clarity of purpose, unwavering collective loyalty, and this incredible resourcefulness that's born out of need.
And that loops us right back to that idea of the unseen empire. We spent this time talking about the ants' incredibly complex, vast, well-organized world, a whole social structure operating 24/7, totally invisible to us, the casual observer, right under our feet.
Which leaves us with a really powerful final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If tiny ants can build something that complex, that vast, that organized, an entire hidden network and economy, strategizing, working relentlessly, all without us noticing, then what powerful, organized networks and systems might exist in the human world? Systems operating by their own strict rules, their own economies, maybe necessitated by their own kinds of external hostility that we might be completely failing to recognize just because we only see what's happening above the surface.
Yeah, look deeper. The world's full of these invisible architectures, these hidden codes of conduct, all built by necessity. It just depends on whether you've got the street intelligence to actually see them.
So the next time you see that line of ants marching across your path, don't just see pests. See them maybe as the original hustlers, the 6-legged embodiment of thug life. Look for the empire under your feet.